This is exactly what people mean when they say Hamas hides behind Palestinian civilians, that they use human shields. It's a perfect example. I mean, we just got confirmation that the leader of Hamas, Mohammad Sinwar, was killed while hiding in a tunnel underneath an active hospital in the Gaza Strip. Now, today we're going to run through some of the footage showing what we've learned over the last couple days, and we're going to try to push back on some of these claims that I'm seeing in a couple different directions. First off, that this is fake, the footage doesn't exist, there's too many jump cuts, so it's not real or something like that, that it did not connect to the hospital, thereby it's not a real tunnel or not as important, that Israel built these tunnels, and then last but not least, that doesn't matter, no matter what, Israel is not justified in striking this close to a hospital facility. Now, something I want everyone to keep in mind as we're running through this, because it is so easy, especially in this conflict, to get sidetracked and start thinking that the discussion of one item justifies something else somehow. The core issue here is that the leader of Hamas, the militant group in Gaza that still holds a fair number of Israeli hostages, was using an active operating hospital above ground for protection. He was hanging out underneath the hospital specifically because that hospital is a protected structure. So let's start out here with kind of a high-level overview presented just earlier today by The Telegraph. I thought it was worth starting with a source that wasn't directly from Israel, because that's one of the pushbacks I often see. Hey, it's coming directly from IDF. So here's one coming from The Telegraph. Let's give it a listen.
Standing at the entrance to the Accident Emergency Department of the European Hospital to the west of Khan Yunis. Now, about a month ago, this hospital compound was the scene of a massive IDF airstrike. Behind me is a crater. Now, that's not created by the airstrike, that's been dug recently by the IDF to expose a Hamas tunnel network right under the hospital. And the reason this is so significant is because this is where they say the IDF killed Mohammad Sinwar, the leader of Hamas in Gaza, in that airstrike a month ago. I've just been down into that tunnel. The stench of human decomposition is overwhelming. It's tiny, it's cramped. We were shown a room with blood all over the floor, congealed bloody rags, a couple of dirty mattresses, a TV, a couple of IDF M16 rifles, where the IDF say Mohammad Sinwar spent his last moments after that strike. They've just confirmed that one of the bodies they recovered in there was indeed the leader of Hamas.
We've actually got some of the documents, identification documents from Mohammad Sinwar. I'll put them up on the screen here that the IDF said they recovered when going into the tunnel long after this strike. Again, it was carried out about a month ago. One thing I wanted to mention in that clip is they call out the M16 rifle on the wall, and that is something I saw people point to and say, wait a minute, Hamas does not use M16s. That's something the IDF would use. Correct. And we have seen from the beginning of this conflict that those are captured weapons, and Hamas uses them as trophies of a sort. So it's not unique to this conflict, although we've seen it quite a bit in this conflict. Anytime Hamas can use or show off some sort of Israeli equipment, they do so. And that appears to be what they have hanging on the wall down here. Now, at the same time, when looking at this reporter's footage, I get the pushback of, wait a minute, it looked like that was some footage from inside of the tunnel, but how can we be sure that it was actually him going down there? And the IDF didn't just hand him this footage. And for that, we've got another reporter actually going down kind of selfie style, showing us inside of the tunnel. So a couple, actually. But let's start with one here. You know what? Let's start with the one from the IDF actually talking through what she sees in English. And then we'll come back and discuss. Here we go.
We're here at the entrance to the emergency room of the European hospital. And behind me is the descent to the tunnel where Mohammad Sinwar and Mohammad Shabana were killed just 3 weeks ago. Right at the entrance of the emergency room, we have to wear masks, and the descent is pretty steep, so we're holding on to a rope. But as we're going down, you can see this tunnel shaft behind me, leading into the command and control compound that is under this hospital. The tunnel is only 8 meters deep. We're going in. Hamas did not feel the need to dig deeper. They thought they were safe under a hospital. Just a couple days ago, in this exact tunnel, they found the bodies of Mohammad Sinwar. And so the stench of the bodies is pretty present. This is the room. As you can see, dead bodies were here for quite some time. This is a room, a living quarter, that was designed specifically for staying here for a long time. You see military equipment. They found cash in here. There's water bottles, urine bottles, religious books, shoes, tools, a television, some dry goods and snacks, dishes, water, running water they had here. Further down this tunnel, there are more living quarters, more rooms, toilets. Just like every tunnel Hamas has built in Gaza. But this is 8 meters underneath a hospital where the people of Gaza were going to get their medical care and medical attention. And Hamas has robbed them of that. And just like this tunnel, every other civilian amenity in Gaza, every single other human right of the people of Gaza, Hamas hijacks and uses for terror.
All right, so real quick to my American audience, she kept saying 8 meters. That's roughly 26 feet. And she said, and we're going to play some more clips of this tunnel, but 26 feet underground is significant, right? And I think just compared to some tunnel locations in Gaza, it's not that deep. Some that run through, agricultural fields or through residential areas, they tend to go even deeper. What she's getting at is that the idea was that IDF would not strike a hospital, so it didn't have to be as far underground. Even then, 26 feet of packed dirt can be a lot to get through for really any type of munition. That takes specific types of ordnance to actually penetrate that and hit the bunker beneath. On that note, I don't know about you, but in this footage, I feel like I can see the smell down there. These guys died probably around 3 weeks ago. It sounds like they likely suffocated when the IDF hit a couple locations around the tunnel, maybe some entrances, and they suffocated down in that tunnel, and their bodies have just been decomposing for at least 2.5, maybe 3 weeks. So yeah, the smell is probably pretty ripe down there at this point. Now, I get it. That was an IDF soldier walking us through there, and people are always skeptical when a military puts out information. So let's go ahead and turn over. We've got another reporter here doing a similar walkthrough, and we're going to go ahead and talk through as we play this one. Again, I want you to pay attention to how deep that is below, because I heard some people say, like, wait a minute, how is this tunnel still intact if there's so much above ground that's destroyed? Why is the IDF destroying everything above ground, but these tunnels still appear to be in good shape? Look at that. Look at how far below surface level you have to go before you actually hit the outside of the tunnel. And even then, we've seen in plenty of cases where the IDF carries out strikes against some of these tunnels and they just fracture a little bit. They don't completely cave in. Again, the type of ordnance required to effectively get down this far through packed earth and cave in that tunnel is significant. And then even if one portion caves in, there's still, we've got some maps we'll run through later in today's video. There's still multiple exit points and entrance points usually, and these tunnels branch out in multiple directions. Hamas knows what they're doing. It was very smart in how they constructed these. Another key aspect here, just to keep in mind, is we're already hearing folks say, well, the hospital must have known, and how could they not have known? And first off, there's no indication that this tunnel actually connected to the hospital. I've not seen any evidence of that presented. I've not seen any claims of that quite yet. That doesn't really matter. That's not the reason the tunnel is here. The reason the tunnel is here is because it's using the hospital overhead as protective cover. It's less about getting into and out of the tunnel network, which could be any number of entrances and exits all across the Khan Yunis area, and more about this. They're calling it a command center, but think of it as the headquarters facility for some of the Hamas leadership, which has been pretty degraded at this point. So there's not very many of them, probably a smaller and smaller location. It's all about what's overhead. It's not about how you actually get there. But either way, if you're talking about something 25 feet underground, there could be a tunnel 25 feet under my house right now. I probably wouldn't have any idea. So this is very different than some other tunnels we've seen in other areas of the Gaza Strip. Earlier in the war, there was a tunnel directly underneath the UNRWA or AUNRWA building in Gaza, and there was a lot of pushback because there were wires running from the tunnel directly overhead, as in the tunnel, whatever was down there was siphoning electricity off of the actual UN headquarters above ground. That's a little bit different. That one's hard to explain. I mean, if my electricity usage went through the roof or was that of an apartment building and I'm just a single house, there's going to be questions. So in that case, that one's pretty hard to deny. When there's entrances or exits either inside of a hospital or a building or in the outside premise, kind of what we saw at Shifa, a lot of entrances and exits right in and around the hospital, that is harder to deny. In this case, just a tunnel running underneath, I could kind of see it both ways. At the same time, I would argue that a lot of the hospital staff at this point, the ones that have been in Gaza for any significant period of time, have probably been incentivized to turn a blind eye and not necessarily pay attention to what it is they're seeing, especially something as sensitive as this. Now, I mentioned that there was no suggestion that I've seen that these tunnels ran into the hospital. And to that end, the IDF released another series of videos here that I wanted to highlight, kind of maps and infographics, and it's got a little bit of everything, but it gives you an idea of where this specific area is. We got the European hospital called out, surrounded by a couple schools, and you'll see where the tunnel network appears to go. Right, it kind of crisscrosses through the hospital. I actually had to cut out some of this footage. You're going to see some Preston Stewart editing jump cuts. There's one of them, because the IDF in their original footage actually showed a bunch of dead bodies, Sinwar's body and some others. A little bit graphic. Cut them out for this one, though, to show the entire thing. I liked this clip because it kind of shows the overhead view of where these tunnels went through. Again, the focus is that the hospital is overhead, limiting the possibility of airstrikes against that network. This does not show any entrance or exit points. It'll be interesting to see in coming days if the IDF actually puts those out, if they're able to locate them. And of course, this here is an illustration. I don't like these as much. I think the IDF kind of got themselves in some hot water over the Shifa hospital when they released what looked like some massive underground C2 network with screens everywhere, high tech, and then the IDF got down there and it was just pretty simple tunnels, still tunnels under a hospital, but nothing like the animation showed. This is what I like with these graphics, is showing the location of where the tunnels actually run in relation to the hospital. Now, one of the arguments I've seen raised in relation to all of this is, hey, wait a minute, Israel built these tunnels, so ipso facto, it's okay that Hamas is there, I guess. I'm not really sure what the justification is on that one, but it's worth pushing back on. What that all comes back to is a statement made by former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, where he said that in 1983, Israel built a secure underground operating room and a tunnel network beneath Building 2 of the Shifa Hospital further north in Gaza City. That was claimed by Israel. They said, we built that. We have to keep in mind this is significantly further south, and Hamas has bragged and highlighted and shown off their tunnel network and their capabilities to dig these things all across the entire city. So this is one of those where I think it's just noise being thrown out there. If Israel, first off, Israel did not build all of the Hamas tunnels. Hamas did, and they're very good at it. They've been very effective at building these over the years. But even if Israel did build these tunnels, still having the commander of the militant organization hiding underneath a hospital is notable, I would say. Also, as we can see through some of these clips, this is not your normal hospital underground network. All right, this is very clearly a Hamas tunnel utilizing the hospital for overhead cover. There's no hospital in the United States or probably no hospital in Israel or most of the world where when you go down, one extra flight of stairs, it starts to look like this. Okay, this is a separate structure. Now, the last thing I wanted to highlight here is the argument that no matter what, this still does not justify the striking of a hospital. And here's, people are not going to like this, but legally, the IDF is justified in carrying out strikes against this underground infrastructure. My understanding is that the strikes were carried out outside of the hospital. They did not hit the hospital directly. Maybe it was some of the buildings on the outskirts, but the focus was on the tunnel network, and they waited for the opportunity. They got some intelligence that Sinwar was no longer surrounded by hostages, and they used that as an opportunity to carry out the strike and kill the leader of Hamas. It is not pretty. War is not pretty in general. There is no situation where you ever want to see a hospital hit with bombs and ordnance. In this case, the hospital technically and legally loses its protected status when the militants are using it as cover. So the fact that they're underneath it in a tunnel network is not drastically different than if they set up their office in the middle of the compound and the IDF had to storm into the hospital to get to them. The hospital and the nature of that facility is being used as protection. Sucks. I know, it's war, right? I wish that Hamas wasn't doing that, because then we wouldn't have these conversations about how close can you drop bombs to a hospital, and how close should you drop bombs to a hospital, and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, based off of everything that I've seen at this point, these do appear to be justified strikes, even if they were not pretty. I've not heard anything about civilian casualties or collateral damage associated with this. If there was any, hopefully it was minimal. But again, the issue here, the problem here, is we have Hamas leadership. In this case, Mohammad Sinwar, deliberately hanging out underneath an active hospital in the Gaza Strip. He's using the Palestinian people as human shields. It's awful, and there's no doubt a lot of people that have suffered because of that exact strategy. But that's all I've got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.